On November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils disappeared after a workplace dispute. A day later, his body was found in a pulp vat with a 50-pound weight wrapped around his neck. Over 30 years later, exactly who killed Monfils remains a mystery. Welcome to the Monfils 6 podcast. My name is Damon Schneider.
My name's Mike Putchell.
Tonight's episode is the interrogation of Brian Kellner. Before we begin, though, I just wanted to make one or two notes. We had said that John Zukowski, we thought perhaps he had retired, but he is actually currently a judge, and we know this by an author named Joe Vertigan, who is currently writing a book on the Monfils case, which he hopes to have published by December 2025. And we'd love to have him as a guest on our podcast to promote his book at some point. So if, Joe, you're listening, please reach out to us. Also, we're doing the David Weiner versus Wiener. We're going to go back with Wiener at this point because everyone else is telling us it's Wiener. So from now on, we're going with Wiener, and we hope we're right. We apologize if we're not. So the Green Bay Press-Gazette reported to have collected the reward monies in terms of the Monfils case, and that had totaled over $60,000. But the editor of the Gazette had said that the Green Bay Police Department had actually dispersed the money. After much wrangling, the Green Bay Police Department finally sent the authors redacted payments, one for $27,000 and one for $5,000. My guess is the $27,000 would have went to the Verstrats. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, the $27,000. I think that was recorded and documented as the amount that Winkler.
What about the $5,000?
I don't know about that one, but I'm pretty sure we had covered earlier the $27,000 was the amount Winkler had handed off to them. And as far as the authors go into like the difficulty with getting information kind of being run around between the paper and the police, and then the city attorney, and then even Crime Stoppers. I have a feeling, I don't know if it's so much that the police are being secretive. I actually just think that no one knows what's going on in that department. That's the vibe that I got, is that there's just a lot of I guess you could call it incompetence, but I just think people don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's true. I've said this before, that I just think that they were poorly trained, in general. And that has a lot to do with this case. Is just the Green Bay Police Department was not up to the task. The authors then point out that the recipient of the reward money was important because this case was built entirely on hearsay. So that's the reason why they wanted to know. And in their opinion, the Green Bay Police Department really liked to keep secrets. But as you said, and as I sort of have stated throughout, it might have been just that they were sort of incompetent. Now, at the same time, Dale Bastian had actually struck up his own oddball investigation upon Detective Winkler's request. And this angered a lot of the employees at the mill. And in particular, Connie Jones issued a restraining order against Dale Bastian. Why do you think this angered the employees so much?
I don't know exactly. I have a feeling, I mean, he's obviously trying to clear his name, which is completely understandable. So, he was probably being kind of pesty with the questions, and I would imagine people just kind of wanted him to leave them alone.
On the 2-year anniversary of Monfils' death, the Green Bay Press Gazette ran a story that Monfils had been killed by gang members. Officer Greg Urban defined a gang as 3 or more people who use symbols and clothes and choose in quote unquote turf. And the Gazette opinion writer compared the mill workers to be like a youthful street gang. Why do you think that the Gazette opinion writer was referring to the mill workers as a youthful street gang?
I have no clue. When I was reading about that part, I kind of wrote that off just because, I mean, that's the point. He is an opinion writer, so he is there to just share his own opinions, not necessarily objective facts. So, I mean, to me, that doesn't even make any sense when he says that if a gang is a group of 3 or more people who use common marks, signals, or clothes. Well, the Monfile 6 don't do any of that. They don't have common marks, signals, or clothes, so right off the bat, that doesn't even fit them.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe he was just trying to sort of come up with this idea that maybe there were cliques within the mill, and Monfiles got on the wrong side of one of these cliques, kind of. Winkler had interviewed Brian Kellner twice, once in the evening of November 29th, and then again in the morning of November 30th. The 2 interviews amounted to 8 hours and produced a 12-page statement, which Kellner had signed. And this basically told the story of the Fox Den. First off, can you imagine sitting through 8 hours of police interview?
I know, that's what I was thinking too. It just kind of shows you what I got from that was that he really didn't know his rights. He could have ended that at any time. But I think there's some intimidation going on there, feeling like he needs to stay until the interview is determined to be over. I cannot imagine that. I would have said, this is going on far too long. I'm not under arrest. I'm leaving.
Yeah. And there's always the line of, I'm not going to say anything unless my lawyer is present as well. So Kellner had never talked about the play acting before this. This means that Kellner, his wife Verna, and the Fox Den bar owners Ron and Charlotte must have been sitting on this very important, as the authors deem, earth-shattering information for over 5 months, yet chose not to act on it. So the Fox Den supposedly took place on the weekend of July 4th, 1994. So this is now November. It's about 5 months later. If this play acting really went on, wouldn't the bar owners have gone to the police and said, "Guess what happened? This weekend at our bar, Keith Kutzka just confessed, right?"
Yeah, you would think so, but we already know from previous episodes that the bar owners did not even say that this happened, and they weren't even interviewed.
Indeed. And the authors point out in 1997, 3 years after this major victory, Detective Winkler would be given a 27-page letter from the Green Bay Police Department telling him to resign or be fired. Why, if he had just cracked this unsolvable case, would that have happened?
I don't know. I don't know what was going on there. I always wanted to know when we first read this book if the message of the letter was to resign or be fired. Why does that take 26 pages? Shouldn't that be one page? That should be pretty straightforward.
Maybe it had allegations of all his misconduct throughout the years. Anyways, in the documentary Beyond Human Nature, when Winkler is interviewed, Winkler sort of states that the reason he was fired was that he told the truth about the tape being released. So how does that jive with the statement from the book?
What do you mean? Go into that question a little more.
In the documentary Beyond Human Nature, Detective Winkler states in an interview that the reason he was fired is because he told the truth about the tape being released. But the book sort of states that after an internal investigation, Winkler had been found as a soiled police officer full of misconduct, and that's the reason he was fired.
Yeah, I don't know what really went on there because, I mean, yes, in the film, the documentary, he was very upfront, but we know he was not upfront in the book here. He wasn't even cooperating to be interviewed for this book. So, somewhere between 2009 and 20... When was the documentary made?
2023, it was released.
Okay, so like 2021, 2022, when they were putting this all together, something changed in him. He was speaking up. So I don't really know what was going on there. I think that my take on it is that even though they got them convicted, the Monfils 6, I still think that they recognize that things were handled not in a normal way, not by the book. And so even though he's the one who got the conviction and got the evidence, I think they still knew that he had unconventional methods, and I think they just wanted to make a break from him. They didn't want him to be associated anymore with the department.
Memento mori. Remember, you must die someday. However, your life can be remembered forever by contacting us at seasonsoflifememorials.com. We are here to teach you how to create a film about your life that can be seen at your future gravesite, as well as within the obituary section of your very own newspaper. Contact us today at seasonsoflifememorials.com. So we brought up my friend Bula and Bula's passing, and one of the great things that Bula did in his life that I think the world should know about is that when he was around 15, his dad left his family and he didn't pay child support, and they had many kids. And Bula actually, when they would eat dinner, he wouldn't eat any dinner. He would let all of his brothers and sisters eat first, even though he was the oldest. And then he would just eat the scraps that were left afterwards. So I think that's, one of the things that shows that Bula lived a life that mattered. What about you, Mike? What about you and your dad?
Well, we talk about how important it is with these videos that we make for people to really use the video as a way to make a statement about how they made an impact to the people around them. And just one of the things that comes to mind, and I included this in the video, was I think humor really goes a long way, and making people laugh is a special skill. And that was something my dad always had, that people talked about all the time when we had the funeral. That was something that always came up, is how he made people laugh. And there's specific mentionings of that in the video that I made. And just kind of a side note of how important some of these videos can be in the memorial services. The people that came to the funeral, this was a group of people, so his coworkers, his friends, family, people that just knew him from different areas of life, they all came together for him, showing us all the impact he made on them. And it's just kind of one last time where those people are all going to be in the same room, and there's kind of some sadness there that that that's never going to happen again. You're never going to have that group of people together again. But through these videos, we can kind of keep that feeling going by remembering who the person was and the impact they made on everybody's lives.
And we're back. So when comparing the detail sheets that Winkler wrote with that of his partner, Ken Brohagen, it shows how different they really were and how they conducted themselves. Brohagen's detail sheets are clean and factual, whereas Winkler's are slanted and peppered with comments on a person's mental or emotional state, often emphasizing the negative. The Verstraets provided nothing, but still changed Winkler, the authors speculate. Once he had them recording Kutzka, Winkler felt that he could make up lies in terms of the audio recordings he had, and he used these lies to manipulate Kellner, who he believed Winkler already had everything on tape. So Winkler is basically at this time just telling Brian Kellner, I have all these recordings of these confessions. You just have to verify that this is how it really happened. Was that ethical? We've brought this up a couple times.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a couple different levels there. Ethically, as a person, I'd say no, but I mean, this is just kind of how a lot of investigations are done. I don't necessarily see a problem with it if it's legal. I mean, they're allowed to do this. The police are allowed to lie. So I don't see a problem with that. What I do see an issue with, though, is I don't understand. Like, if I was Brian Kellner, if Winkler's telling me we have all this on tape, we just need you to confirm it, that wouldn't make any sense to me. If you have it on tape, then why do you need anybody? If it's on tape, it's on tape. To me, that wouldn't make any sense to me. Why would you need somebody to confirm what typically in a court proceeding, a videotape or audio tape is like the best evidence you can get? So why would you need me to help you with that?
So it was around this time that Detective Winkler began wearing a fedora and a long coat. And some people, like his high school teacher, basically said that the Monfils case had ruined Randy as he had become obsessed with it. So at this point, it's sort of the breaking point. Randy Winkler has gone overboard. Because Kellner socialized with Kutzka, some mill workers told the authors that they believed Kellner was wearing a wire for Winkler. Do you think that was possible? That Kellner had been wearing a wire?
Do I think it's possible, or do I think he was doing it?
Both.
Well, yeah, it's certainly possible, but no, I don't think he was doing it at all. I also want to add, too, that one of the things that confused me about how Kellner was kind of sucked into all this, these tapes that Winkler was talking about, were these tapes that Kellner was supposedly recorded on as well? Do you know?
That's what Winkler had told him.
Okay. And that's what I didn't get, because if Winkler's saying, okay, we have these confessions of Kutzka talking to you, wouldn't Kellner have said, okay, he never talked to me, he never confessed? Wouldn't you say that? Like, if you knew that you were never part of a conversation like that, wouldn't you say flat out, That didn't happen.
I would. Maybe this is where the author suggests that they were putting Winkler was putting a lot of outside pressure on Kellner, and so maybe trying to get him to believe that a lot of bad things were going to happen if he didn't. So Kellner was also known to embellish. Artie Kutska described him as a there guy, meaning if you had gone on vacation somewhere, he had gone there too. And he'd also been described as a oneer. So if you had something, he had something, or he had one other thing better than you. So he was that kind of guy. Kellner had also told Winkler before the interview on November 29th that he was having a lot of personal problems. Winkler responds to this before the interview by telling Kellner that the police have proof that Keith Kutska was having an affair with his wife, Verna, and if they didn't cooperate, they would expose the affair during the trial. This interview thus allowed Kellner to get payback against Kutska, and as the authors described it, it was all very clever. So, what do you think about that in terms of ethics? Telling the person you're just about to interview that their wife was having an affair with this person who you can put them behind bars just by saying yes, basically, to what's on the paper, right?
Yeah, again, it's not ethical as a human being, but again, as a law enforcement officer, again, I'm not saying it should be allowed, but it is. So, I don't see a huge problem with it because it is legal. I still, again, though, I can't put myself in Kellner's frame of mind too much, but I really do think that he was just intimidated here and he wanted to get out of there, so he just wanted to get this over with. But like, if my wife had been having an affair, because they were separated anyway, I didn't really see that as a convincing point where they might have to expose that affair and that might be embarrassing. Was his point that would be embarrassing for his wife or for Brian?
Or maybe just for the family in general because they had kids, So Winkler told Kellner he could avoid going to the John Doe hearing, and this would be good because the judge might not believe him if he had to go to the John Doe. And if the judge determined that he was contradicting himself, he could lose his job, his kids, and his wife's affair would be exposed. And at this point, the interview turns into an interrogation. So I just want to play a short clip of Randy Winkler being interviewed. This is back around 2015 about whether or not he went into the house of the Kellners while the adults were not home and tried to interview their daughter, Amanda, for what could have been as long as 2 hours. So let's just take a listen to that now.
Do you recall that you waited one day for Amanda Kellner to come home from school at her home?
No, I do not.
Do you recall that you were waiting there, she came home from school, and you followed her in the house?
No.
Do you remember that you stayed there an hour or two?
No.
You don't remember asking her questions about conversations that she had heard her parents have?
No, I do not.
Do you remember Mr. Kellner telling you to leave his children out of your efforts to obtain information from him?
No.
You don't remember he was angry that you had involved the children?
I never involved his children.
So, Mike, do you think that Winkler had the right to go into the Kellner's house when there were no adults around and interview their young daughter as to what their parents were saying?
No, this one And I'm laughing a little bit because, I mean, I don't make the laws. This one we know is illegal. You know, that you can't question a minor without the presence of their guardian. So that one, completely agree, wrong. Illegal, probably. And yeah, completely wrong there.
The authors also want to point out that all of Kellner's testimony would be hearsay, as he was deer hunting the morning of November 21st, 1992. So he wasn't even in the plant. So why is he being interviewed as to what happened to Monfils that day? It's all sort of very odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it shows that they're really grasping at straws for evidence here.
What's remembered lives. Losing someone precious from our lives is the most painful event that one can endure. Seasons of Life Memorials is dedicated to making sure the person you lost is never forgotten. We work with you to help you craft a film about your loved one's life that can be viewed at the gravesite. We can also help you create a film about your very own life that can be viewed in the obituary section of your hometown newspaper. Imagine that, your friends, relatives, and neighbors viewing your own unique story and how your life truly did matter. Visit our website, seasonsoflifememorials.com, and follow us on social media today to start viewing what we can do for you.
So on the November 29th interview, Kellner asked to leave after 3 hours so that he could take his kids to a movie as it was one of their birthday. And Winkler said yes. At this point, there had been absolutely no talk of the Fox Den incident. The break between the interviews allowed Winkler to set his trap. He wrote in his detail sheet that Dodie Verstraete had a recording of all the information about how Monfils was killed, and that Brian and Verna Kellner's names were on these recordings as well. Kellner believed Kutzka had confessed over the tapes, and Winkler again was just double checking as to what as to the facts as Kellner remembered them. Winkler wrote on one detail sheet that Dodie had talked with Keith at the Fox Den, and that Charlotte had told Keith to, quote unquote, tone it down. So, again, Brian Kellner believes everything that Winkler is telling him is true, that everything's on these audio tapes, and that he's just basically there to confirm what is already on the tapes. Kellner then offers up the bubbler scenario, drawing upon 7 different rumors that had sort of floated about the mill. One of these, actually, rumors that had been bandied about was that Kellner told Winkler that Ray Moore had made a karate chop motion with his hand and said, "Now we've got him, Monfils, by the balls." What do you think about that statement?
I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous. It's, again, this is all hearsay. Kellner wasn't even around for any of this. These are just rumors going around the mill, right?
Basically, yeah.
So, I don't know. What do you think of that comment?
It made me laugh when I read it. You know, that it just seems so ridiculous. It's something out of a movie, right? You know, it's someone who has an active imagination.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Well, and Ray Moore, if I remember, he was one of the Monfils 6 who had like one of the least connection to Monfils, right?
Yeah.
So him saying, "Now you've got him by the balls," I just don't see him saying that, because I don't think he really would have even cared about this whole situation with the tape.
I think if he was in that Coop 9 and Kutzka had been playing that tape, I don't even think he would have raised his eyes up. He would have been so disinterested. I want to play a second audio clip. This is Kellner at the trial basically agreeing with everything as to the way Winkler laid it out. So let's take a listen to that now.
Everybody except Ray went out the front door of the coop and down towards number 7 paper machine where Tom was. Ray went out the back door, number 9's booth, and that they confronted Tom by the bubbler.
Kellner places all 6 suspects at the murder scene. Talks specifically about Ray Moore screaming at Monfils and Mike Hearn shoving him in the chest.
Ray Moore standing behind him, and Mike Hearn go up in front of him, and they were shaking that tape in his face saying, "We got you now, there's no way you can deny this."
According to Kellner, Dale Bastian, Michael Piazakowski, Michael Johnson, and Kutzka were also in that control room. Kellner says Kutzka told him what happened next.
This was going on, that Mike Hearn was right up in Tom's face and gave him a shove. And sometime during that time period there, whatever, how long it took, that one of the guys gave him a slap upside the back of the head. He said he was hit in the head, yeah. Yes, sir.
And did Mr. Kutzka say where he was hit in the head?
Top back.
If Kellner is believed, then everybody else is lying. They're lying to cover up their crime. If one fall, they should all fall.
So Kellner did indeed sign off on the statement about the Fox Den, but he did not write the statement. Winkler had written the statement. Winkler had Kellner intimidated at the time of the statement. Kellner would go on to tell the authors that he did not want to get into a fight with Winkler over what, quote unquote, some mindless drunk gossip at a bar. And then keep in mind, again, this was all over a 2-day period totaling 8 hours. So I could kind of see his point with that. He just wants to go home, right?
Yeah, going through this a little bit more, I'm starting to understand, even though I don't think I would do it, but I'm starting to understand why Kellner relinquished here, or relented. I think he wanted to get out of there, like you said, but then I think he was intimidated by the threats of the John Doe hearing, which he probably just didn't want to take part of because it's taking a chunk out of your life. And then the threat of, like, if they catch that you were lying. I think there's another element too, though, that isn't really explored, but this is just a vibe that I'm getting. I think a lot of people in this type of community, Green Bay, and Green Bay is not a small town, but I think it has small town traditions, and the vibe that I'm getting here is that people trust law enforcement at this time, at least, in this town, in Green Bay. And I just think that if Kellner is being told all this stuff, he's believing it because it's coming from someone from authority. And I think that that's kind of like the small town traditions that they have, where you don't question authority and you figure, well, if they're telling me this, it must be true. I think that that's kind of what's going on here, is that he just believed him because he is an authority figure, which is unfortunate.
New episodes of the Monfils 6 podcast drop every other Friday. Please join us again. Thanks for listening.
Have you recently lost a loved one and want to hold on to their memory forever? Would you like all of the world to view what their life had been about? Seasons of Life Memorials is what you are looking for. We create individual and unique documentary shorts that will allow anyone visiting the gravesite to view the documentary and your memories of the loved one. Contact us today to set up an appointment at seasonsoflifememorials.com.